The night poured over the city like a thick veil of shadows, draping the streets in an impenetrable darkness. Fog slithered between the old buildings, whispering secrets into the ears of those still daring to walk at that hour. In a secluded alley on the edge of the city's oldest district, a lone figure moved with steady steps, heels echoing against the damp cobblestone. Her name was Lilith, a woman of hypnotic beauty, like something out of a romantic painting from another century. Her skin was pale as marble under the moonlight, framed by cascading waves of fiery red hair that reached the middle of her back. Her lips, painted a deep crimson, were pure temptation, and her coal-lined eyes seemed to devour the darkness around her. She wore a black lace corset that hugged her figure, revealing a glimpse of her neckline, an inviting abyss. A torn tulle skirt draped over her thighs, paired with fishnet stockings that clung to her legs like cobwebs. Her hands, gloved in black velvet, were tucked into the pockets of a long coat, and a choker with a cameo pendant adorned her neck, resting just above the place where her pulse beat steadily. Lilith adored the night. To her, darkness was not something to fear, but a refuge, a silent lover that embraced her with its cold touch. That night, she walked without a destination, searching for something. Though even she didn't know what. Perhaps a fleeting encounter, perhaps a knowing glance in some bar where the music was as dark as her soul. But she was not alone. From the deepest shadows, a pair of eyes burned like embers in the gloom. A man watched her with inhuman stillness. Tall, slender, and wrapped in a long black coat, he moved through the mist as if he were part of it. His skin was alabaster, his features impossibly perfect, sculpted with a precision beyond mortal hands. His hair, black as midnight, cascaded elegantly to his shoulders. As Lilith turned a corner, the figure emerged from the darkness, following her without making a sound. She felt his presence before she saw him. A shiver crawled down her spine, the unmistakable sensation of being hunted. Slowly, she turned, and there he was. He smiled. "Good evening, beautiful," he murmured, his voice like the wind whispering through an abandoned cathedral, deep, enveloping, ancient. Lilith regarded him with a mix of caution and fascination. There was something about him, something that made her want to run and yet stay at the same time. "Good evening," she replied, her tone laced with the defiance of someone unafraid of the dark. He took a step closer. Though he never touched her, she felt the weight of his presence on her skin. "Are you not afraid to walk these streets alone?" he asked, a smirk playing at his lips. "There are creatures that lurk in the night." Lilith tilted her head, amused. "And if I were afraid, what would be the point of the night?" He chuckled softly. "You are different." "I know." A tense silence stretched between them. Lilith felt a strange dizziness, as if gravity itself was bending toward him. His dark eyes trapped her, stripped her bare, but devoured her without laying a single hand on her. "Tell me your name," he whispered. "Lilith." A shadow of a smile crossed his pale lips. A fitting name for a child of the night. Before she could reply, he moved, unnaturally fast. In the blink of an eye, he was behind her, his cold breath grazing her ear. A shudder ran through her body. "Let me show you true darkness." Lilith had no time to react. A sharp pain pierced her neck, forcing a gasp from her lips, a mixture of pleasure and agony. She felt her life being drained in slow, deliberate sips, the warmth of her body slipping away into his hungry mouth. The world spun, her vision blurred. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and an intoxicating dizziness wrapped around her like a lullaby. But then, suddenly, he released her, letting her body sink gently onto the cobblestones. Lilith gasped for air, her body cold, her heart beating erratically. She looked up to find him watching her, his dark satisfaction evident. "Do not be afraid," he murmured, leaning over her. "Death is not the end. It is only the beginning." Lilith felt her throat burn, her skin prickle with an unfamiliar hunger. She raised a trembling hand to her lips and felt the sticky trace of her own blood. Her vision sharpened, the sounds of the night growing unbearably clear, and then a sharp pain in her gums forced her mouth open. She felt them, the fangs. Her fingers clawed at the ground in desperation as her new nature surged through her veins like fire, an insatiable craving consuming her. Her eyes, darker now, more intense, sought his. He extended a hand. "Rise, Lilith. The night calls you." She took it, and in that moment she ceased to be human. The city never noticed her disappearance. But on the coldest nights, when the moon is barely a whisper in the sky, the boldest souls claim to have seen a woman with blood-red hair and crimson lips drifting through the shadows. Her laughter is a whisper in the dark, and her eyes, two endless voids. They say she is looking for company, or perhaps a new prey.